Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is the Black Link. And as we inch ever closer towards the official release date of Anthem, February 22nd, we get more and more of a grasp on what this game is offering now, as well as what's going to be coming in the future. There's definitely been a lot of glitches and issues going on, many of which were promised to be addressed in the big Day 1 update that was supposed to be launching when the game came out on the 22nd. Well, Bioware surprised us today by launching that Day 1 update a full day ahead of schedule. Well, technically 2 days ahead of schedule on February 20th. And so over the course of this video, we're going to be going through those patch notes in their entirety. There's going to be a lot of things addressed here, which is great because there were certainly a lot of issues going on with the game right now, and I'm very happy to see some of the changes that we'll be focusing on in this video. It's probably going to be a long one. We're going to be going through the entirety of the patch notes, so maybe put this on as like a podcast or something in the background. I normally do these kinds of patch note breakdowns for Destiny, but I've been playing a lot of Anthem as of late. So I figured why not cover some of these changes here on the channel as well. I'm super excited about some of these anyway, so let's go ahead and dive on into it. A lot of these are going to be separated into different sections, stuff like high level fixes, stronghold fixes, weapon fixes. So we'll be going in the order that they gave us. First things first, we're going to be talking about performance and quality of life changes, the high level fixes. Here's what they had to say. First up, they've decreased loading times for older disk drives. If you've played Anthem on PC, you know how long those loading screens can be, especially if you're not playing off of a solid state drive. Thankfully, that has been addressed in this big update. They've also fixed many of the infinite loading screen issues, the old 95% bug from the beta. They've fixed multiple challenges not tracking properly. A number of issues have been fixed that were causing players to disconnect or crash the game entirely. Personally, that's something I've run into constantly over the past couple of days. Glad it's seeing a change here. And weapons and gear now have numbers present for modifiers. Very good to hear. Those are the high level fixes. Next up are the general fixes and improvements, and there's going to be a lot, so we're very rapidly going to go through these. Alright, first up, loot reveal and expedition summary now correctly play during the end of the expedition screen. The gather party mechanic has been made more lenient in a number of situations, so you won't get teleported quite as often. At the end of the expedition screen, players will no longer get stuck on recording victories or skipping all. Very happy to hear that. The game no longer hangs in the Javelin menu when unlocking the second, third, or fourth Javelin. And during the mission, what freelancers do, dying after killing Junkmaw and freeing Arcanist leaves you unable to progress. This has been fixed. There's been a lot of quest issues with progression being stalled and you not being able to get past certain checkpoints. A lot of those have been addressed here, which is definitely a good thing. Challenges now unlock for players at the correct levels. They fixed some camera issues during cutscenes, and legendary contracts can now be accepted from the Social Hub contract board. Very good change. Some enemies have had their shield values decreased. You should notice this in Hard and Grandmaster 1 and above. Definitely a change I'm very happy to see. Loot now properly drops for players who are downed. Another huge problem in Grandmaster, people who were getting killed at the end of a fight weren't getting their loot from bosses and from big enemies and stuff like that. Happy to see that that's changed. The texture quality on the NPC Prospero has been improved. Final boss of Strongholds now drop loot instead of only being shown on the end of the expedition screen. Anybody who's gotten to Grandmaster in this game knows that most people who run the Strongholds in Grandmaster don't go all the way to the boss. They just do the first section or two of like the Scar mission, get the chest, and then leave. One of the reasons for that was because people mistakenly believed that there was no benefit to fighting the boss, that they weren't going to get any drops from bosses. Turns out bosses were dropping rewards, but you were only seeing those rewards once you got to the end of the expedition screen. So now those drops should be showing up when you actually kill the boss. Of course, incentivizing people to play through those strongholds on Grandmaster difficulty. I still think they should bump up the rewards on Grandmaster difficulty from those stronghold bosses. But I'm very happy that you're at least seeing the stuff that you're going to get now. They fixed the timeouts on echoes and relics to prevent griefing and to handle disconnections properly. Great. No more relic scumming, where people would just pick up the echo and then never deliver it. Now that's going to disappear after a set amount of time and reset, basically. Players can now no longer fall through the floor during the third trial in the Fortress of Dawn. Completing the tutorial expedition will now show the correct ranger appearance. After disconnecting, rejoining an expedition will now place you back into a squad if you were in one previously. Very good change. They've corrected an issue where players could not interact with each other in the launch bay in certain circumstances. They've corrected an issue during the mission Bad Deal, where the outlaws won't spawn, blocking progress. Again, another one of those story mission changes. The start of the expedition screen has been improved, and they've addressed a variety of situations where killing enemies does not properly progress world events. Very happy to see that. Opening a chest now increments Tomb of the Legionnaire progress for all squad members present. This is huge for all you players who are going to be jumping in on the 22nd. There's going to be a story mission you run into very quickly where you have to open up several treasure chests. The way this was before, only the person who actually opened that chest had it count, even if you were in a squad. Very happy to see that they changed that before the game officially launches. And in another big change, Scar snipers can now no longer shoot through storm shields. Hallelujah, thank you for that one. Probably one of the most frustrating things for me as a storm player. They've corrected an issue where players would get stuck on the end of expedition screens in some situations. Players will no longer get disconnected if joining the Finding Old Friends mission while the cinematic is playing. Good change. They've addressed a number of situations where players can get stuck on the environment in the launch bay, and they've increased the damage of the electric status effect. Next, they've corrected an issue where the Shield of Dawn could be crafted with less materials than intended in some situations. After that, the Platinum Mission feat now grants completion as intended. Status effects can more reliably be applied to Titans, that's good. For a while I just thought they were immune to status effects. They fixed loading animations on marksman rifles. Players can now access the vault from the forge, hallelujah for that change, definitely needed. Swimming into jellyfish underwater no longer leaves a visual effect stuck on players. Actually a little bit sad about that one, that was kinda cool. Idle animations will no longer sync up over time in the launch bay, and Halleck is no longer dual-wielding canes in the epilogue scene. Which I didn't think was a glitch, I thought that was a feature of the game, it was hilarious. They've corrected an issue where players could not interact with each other in the launch bay in certain circumstances. They fixed an issue that could cause players in the launch bay to have identical emotes and be unable to use them. The Interceptor melee ability animations will no longer stretch out in certain situations, and they've corrected an issue where the default Ranger appearance doesn't preview in the Forge in some situations. By the way, all animations now play as intended in the Forge. Players can also now enter the Tomb of Goddess while in a party. The default Javelin wear state has been changed from dirty to old, huge change I know. The Sentinel Loyalty 2 text no longer incorrectly states that will lead to a larger vault. Yeah, that used to lie to you. Sad about it. Picking up ammo from the ground now properly gives you 30% of that ammo back into both the current magazine and the maximum spare ammo. They fixed a bug where some global Javelin icon inscription bonuses were not being properly applied to the Javelin and other gear and weapons. You'll notice that. Or rather, you did used to notice that when you reached Grandmaster and you started picking up Masterwork weapons and armor. Glad they fixed that issue. They've also fixed some issues that could cause the armor pip count on the UI to break and not display properly. Alright, there we go. Those are the general fixes and overall improvements to the game, but it's nowhere near close to all the stuff that's changed in this update. Next up are the changes to Strongholds. They fixed an issue that would cause a Stronghold server crash after defeating the last boss. Next up, for the Temple of Scar, players can no longer get stuck in the mine tunnel in the explosive room. Also, players can no longer be blocked from entering the explosives room due to the fog wall. After that, they fixed the Tyrant Mine so people that join the Stronghold in progress do not end up locked away from their team. Good change. They've also adjusted the lighting in Tyrant Mine's underwater section to make it easier to navigate to the exit, because people were still getting lost down there. The Swarm Tyrant will no longer get stuck in the side cave entrances in some situations. They've corrected an issue where players would spawn into different areas of the Tyrant Mine in certain situations, and they've implemented more safeguards to stop players from going AFK in Strongholds. That last one is going to be huge. That was a big problem, especially in the in-game grind of people just kind of going AFK at the very start of the Stronghold, or even joining as a reinforced group and then staying AFK. Next up, we've got the changes coming to challenges. There's only 2 of these. Only Masterwork items can now be used to progress Masterwork challenges as intended. And they've corrected an issue where some challenges track progress simultaneously instead of incrementally, as intended, of course. The example they give is completing the challenges for Blast Missile 1 and then Blast Missile 2, rather than both of those challenges being completed incrementally at the same time. Next, we have got the changes coming to gear and weapons. There's a lot of these. After having the first pilot unlock suit after the tutorials, creating a new pilot and going to the forge no longer causes load screen hangs. Ice damage bonuses are now correctly applied on ice gear. Suit-wide bonuses from inscriptions are now functioning properly. Players can no longer salvage equipped items. And Javelin-specific gear and/or weapons are no longer able to be used on Javelins they aren't intended for. So if you saw some of those glitches with Colossus, like going around with storm abilities, apparently that's no longer going to be a thing. They've also corrected an issue where in some circumstances, Masterwork components do not have any inscriptions. The Endless Siege Masterwork autocannon no longer displays a damage increase of 0% in its tooltip. Suit-wide specific ammo bonuses coming from infusions are now correctly applied. A network error message no longer appears when opening an item chest in the second tutorial. Colossus shoulder gear will now share the appearance of the rest of the Javelin as originally intended. And then after that we get some direct weapon changes. The Deadeye Sniper has increased spare ammo from 10 to 20, great change. Cloudburst has had increased damage from 16.3 to 21, huge buff. Torrent has had increased damage from 22.2 to 28.6. Lightning Strike's pre-visualization will now accurately depict that the explosion snaps to the ground. The Ranger Inferno Grenade has had a base damage increase from 130 to 175. For the Interceptor, Cryoglave's base damage has seen an increase from 20 to 50, and then we get some triple changes for Storm. Living Flame's base damage has increased from 50 to 60, Glacial Beam's damage has decreased from 150 to 120, and the Arc Burst secondary damage has increased from 100 to 150. 2 buffs and a nerf there. Pulse Blast damage has increased from 225 to 300, and now deals extra damage to shields. Previously it did extra damage to armored. Additionally for Ranger, Blast Missile now properly scales up in damage as the item level increases. Great change. For Interceptor, melee attacks now have some minor resistance penetration. Next up, large area of effect abilities will better register multi-kill activities for challenges and medals. Spark Dash functionality has been significantly improved when the target enemy is at a different height, above or below the Interceptor. And then they fixed several gear pieces that had some missing primer or detonator icons. Stuff like the Tempest Strike, the Spark Dash, the Venom Spray, and the Detonating Strike for Interceptor. And then for Colossus, the Lightning Coil, the Shock Coil, and the Flamethrower have now had their primer or detonator icons returned. Additionally, several improvements have been made to ensure gear use on PC prioritizes turning the Javelin towards the reticle rather than casting in front of the Javelin's current direction. Good quality of life change there. Alright, we've also got some very specific changes coming to Javelins. The Colossus Javelin is now able to activate its shield more quickly after using an ability or firing a weapon. The Storm Javelin now reacts to getting hit when its shields are up, so you can kind of figure out when you're getting hit and where that damage is coming from. It's very easy to die with Storm because of that. Glad it's seeing a change. They fixed an exploit that allowed the Storm's ultimate attack to be used more times than intended, no more infinite super. The Colossus Exo can now shield and revive at the same time. The Interceptor's combo aura has been increased in power and now has a damage over time component. Ranger Melee now has a cooldown when striking in the air. The Target Beacon ability now correctly seeks targets. Spark Dash and Venom Spray now target based on player cursor instead of character facing. This should also improve the travel path of the Spark Dash ability. The Colossus will no longer be knocked out of the sky in some situations when an attack was blocked by their shield. Good changes all around the board. Next up, we've got some changes coming to combos and status effects. The combo indicator icons above creatures now are correctly removed when detonated. When a storm detonates an electric status effect, the chained electric effect now correctly deals damage as well, and combo damage now penetrates resistances, meaning you should definitely be focusing more on comboing enemies in the game. Cool stuff. Next, we've got some changes coming to crafting. Non-Masterwork materials purchased from the crafting store now show as their proper rarity instead of incorrectly showing as Masterworked. A number of Javelin components that have had different icons for their recipes and the actual items are now the same. The Battlecry gear recipe now has the correct description. They fixed the Spark Beam gear having the wrong description when being crafted, and crafting recipes are now sorted alphabetically, I guess making it a little bit easier to sort through. The items in the crafting store are now sorted by type to be a little bit clearer as well. Next up for controls, they've added additional mouse and keyboard control improvements. And then finally we have got some big UI changes, which for some people might be the most important thing of all. One of my biggest complaints about this game is that the UI is for the most part pretty awful. There are a lot of little things that they need to tune to make it a bit better. So let's see what they've got. Some conversations were not popping up the reputation points post-conversation completion. This has been fixed. The squad screen now displays the correct information for each player. They fixed a number of issues where subtitles will no longer get stuck on the screen after dialogue is finished as often. Settings should no longer reset upon exiting and restarting the game on Xbox One. Motion blur can now correctly be turned off. This is a huge one for console. On PC, you basically have to turn motion blur off and then turn post-processing off. But on console, there was no real way to completely turn motion blur off. Hopefully that should be in effect now. The electric status effect now shows scaled damage properly. An option has been added to hide the squad member HUD. The edge of the compass will now pulse to indicate enemy locations. Next up, a notification has been added in Fort Tarsus if a player's vault is at the cap of 250 items. On the Repair the Strider step of a cry for help, the search radar has been adjusted to correctly lead the player to all 4 tools. I think they need to do that for basically all the missions where you're sent to go find stuff, because Lord knows that can be a little frustrating in this game. Primer and detonator icons have been added to all interceptor gear. They've corrected a user interface issue where a player's ultimate would show as available when it isn't. Toggling the HDR option now properly prompts the Apply Changes button. Player's banners should now display correctly. Camera shake slider has been added to the settings menu. Players may now track 10 challenges instead of 5. An option to adjust screen boundaries on consoles has been added. Changing a player banner through the banner menu now properly saves the selections. You don't have to keep doing it. Health cooldowns and key bindings now light up on supported keyboards. Quality of life change for PC there. Players will now receive more clear messaging when a squad is disbanded or are kicked from a squad, and squad leaders will no longer always show as ready. After that, the icon for players in a down state will no longer appear in cutscenes. Cipher annotations will now appear for more than one player if they are looking at it simultaneously. They've also removed mentions of respawning on the player UI when they die in a restricted respawn area. The player banner now updates immediately when updated from the squad screen. They fixed a number of situations where a combo will trigger, but no combo floating text appears. Pressing escape to pass a notification screen now no longer opens up the in-game menu. Quick chat messages will now no longer appear from an ignored player. They've removed a message from the mailbox, which incorrectly states that messages will be removed after 3 days. And a number of inscription icons have been updated to properly reflect whether they are Javelin specific or not. Only a few more here. They've corrected an issue where players could not change loadout names on PC. And as an add-on to that, players no longer need to exit and re-enter the Forge for loadout names to update. Finally, the on-screen VoIP indicator, which shows a player speaking, will no longer be active if that player is muted. And there we go, freelancers. That is the entirety of the day 1 patch. Well, now day -1 patch, I suppose it is, for Anthem. This was supposed to go live on February 22nd, but they surprised us by pushing out this massive quality of life update today. And I've got to say, I'm very happy with a lot of the changes in there. A lot of abilities and weapons got buffs. They addressed a lot of the UI issues going on right now. A lot of the things that were making this game a bit frustrating, like the freezes, the crashes, have been addressed with this update, and hopefully will make this a little bit more of a smooth experience to play. But alright, there we go. That is it for the patch notes and it for this video. If you took the time to make it all the way to the end of this, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. Are you excited about any of the changes that went into the big update today? Or maybe you're a player who's waiting to jump in on the 22nd. Be sure to leave me your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. Going to be covering a lot of Anthem stuff in the future, starting with a review video now that we've actually got this patch out, and I feel like I can give it a fair shake, with hopefully a lot of the biggest bugs being taken care of. We'll certainly see. That's it for this one. As always, I am the Black Link. You freelancers, stay frosty.